Bullet Tooth, basically, how do I start this? I mean, there's so many angles. Basically, we have an entity named Bullet Tooth that
Hmm.
feeds off violence and chaos, and basically summoned through a VHS tape by a depressed teen in Chicago, and basically wreaks havoc through the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, he wreaks havoc, but he's not the main character because it follows the one girl and then the kid who summons him.
Yeah, Jasmine and then Caleb I would feel like is probably the main
He
character.
seems, yeah, he's the Winona Ryder in this scenario.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
that's a good comparison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I compare it to Beetlejuice in my mind, even though they're not really all that much alike.
I could see that. I could see that. Beetlejuice, Bullet Tooth,
Yeah,
second
they're
cousins.
both kind of ex spiritual entities, although like it's very surface level
Yeah.
connections. Because you probably a lot more down to earth than Tim Burton ever will be.
I hope so.
I would
But
hope so. So, what kind of we're adapting this into a video game? That's usually the theme of the show.
yeah.
So, what kind of game would you want to translate this to?
I see. Probably should have done my homework and thought about this more.
It don't matter.
I'm not as much of a gamer as like Simmons and other people.
Gotcha.
I owned a system since like PS3.
Okay.
Been a while.
It's been a while.
But I would say probably I feel like either RPG would be pretty cool. Like
Hmm.
if you could play as Jasmine or Fredo or Caleb or maybe even Bullet Tooth.
Okay.
Like that would be fun. A lot of world building.
Yeah.
You go to different parts of Chicago. Or a first person shooter.
Well,
You
and
know.
it could be both too.
Yeah,
There are lots
that's
of
true.
first person shooter RPGs, and lots of first person shooter horror games. I don't know if you played Bioshock.
I know about did I play Bioshock? Actually, I did play it at a friend's house way back in the day briefly. Yeah,
It,
so I
it,
know
it
what
has, yeah, it has horror elements, I
yeah, definitely
suppose.
dark.
Um,
Yeah.
but I guess that's a good jumping off point. Would you want to translate like kind of the direct story of the novel and we follow, Caleb or Jasmine or switch back and forth, or would you want to go outside of the story covered in the novel and play as Bullet Tooth himself?
I feel like if I actually had involvement in the game, um, I'd probably want multiple modes. I'd probably want a story mode where you're trying to stop Bullet Tooth, and you could play as Jasmine, you could play as Caleb, you could play as Fredo, um, and then you unlock Bullet Tooth. Um,
Or Big
or
Polyano?
if it was really going hard, I feel like medieval Bullet Tooth or Dark
Okay.
Ages Multi Tooth that knows other versions like feudal Japan Bullet Tooth. Um,
That is right. That
maybe like
is
some
part of
side
his
mission,
origin.
side quest
Hmm.
too. So
What about so a lot of horror game or like horror franchises, right? Friday the 13th. They've gotten multiplayer games
oh
where
yeah,
you have people. This is sort of in a pseudo popular genre. You have some people playing as the regular human type characters, and then you have someone playing kind of the horror figure. So is that something that might be interesting? A game where
that would be dope. Like if we had
someone's
a story
Bullet Tooth.
mode and we had a multiplayer mode. I have been seeing some of those videos of
Mhm.
that Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Yep.
game. I don't know if
Yep.
you've seen it.
A little bit.
Where I was to play as the villains, the family, or you could be a survivor. So I feel like that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm on board with you.
Now,
I need to bring you on board if Bullet Tooth gets developed into it.
yeah. Well, I mean, you never know nowadays.
That's true, you know.
Franchises, they prop up in the top of a hat. I mean, Do you see this as a franchise? Are you going to write more Bullet Tooths, or is Bullet Tooth a singular?
I want to. I feel like it's been getting a pretty good reception, so I I have a concept for Bullet Tooth number two. I'd be willing to do a Bullet Tooth three. I'd even be willing to do a Bullet Tooth in space.
I mean, it worked for Jason X, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm like, I could bring it all the way home.
Oh man, I would watch.
Um,
I would read sci-fi Bullet Tooth in space.
yeah,
That
yeah, I
sounds
feel like it'd be a
crazy.
fun, crazy, especially with futuristic
Mhm.
weapons and
Would his
tech.
would his teeth still be bullets in the space
Oh, that's a
future?
good question. I'm glad you brought this question. I'd probably make them something more advanced um, than bullets, but they'd probably still be in the shape of some sort of projectile,
Yeah,
something more dangerous than a
laser
bullet.
teeth.
I thought about that. Laser teeth would be pretty
Yeah,
badass.
because the Bullet Tooth, because he's this otherworldly figure, and he changes shape depending on what era he is, right? Because he couldn't have been Bullet
Yeah,
Tooth before there were bullets.
yeah, he's a shapeshifter. Um, he could. I was playing around with the idea of having him in one of these books as a woman.
Okay.
Yeah, because he is sort of androgynous, but obviously he takes on the male genitalia
Mm-hmm.
in this one.
Yes.
So,
Those are described, but that's part of the you have this I don't want to say like feminist, but you have this pro kind of feminine. You have that in Jasmine, um, and then did that influence making Bullet Tooth, I guess, in this version like very distinctly male?
yeah, I mean, you're pretty much on point. I did want Jasmine to have some feminist elements, but I also wanted that conflict of like, she's Palestinian, she's a feminist, but she loves guns, you know. Um, I love playing with people's heads like that. But I didn't necessarily think too deeply about it. Just I use a lot of intuition, so it just felt right to make Bullet Tooth male. And obviously that makes her sort of persona stand out a little bit more, well, a lot more in this case. So it just didn't feel right to make him a woman
Right.
in this.
Not for this story anyway.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Now, is the character of Jasmine based like on someone or is it just like trends you recognize? I know she's like a streamer and like all this stuff.
Yeah, I like playing around with trends I see online. So it was based off no one I know, but there's a few accounts I follow where women love guns. They're like showing off their guns, and it's like pink guns and big guns and small guns and semi-automatics and automatics. And I just thought it was kind of like fascinating and different and cool because it's kind of like you have someone who's soft and feminine, but then they're also dangerous in a sense too. Um, so it that kind of stuck in my head for a while, where it's kind of like, well, it's kind of cool seeing women being pro guns and
Well, and even just pro defending themselves.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
have you ever seen BoJack Horseman, the Netflix show?
I have seen BoJack Horseman. I haven't seen a million episodes or anything like that, but I've seen a couple episodes that I know what you're talking about
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
There's the one. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's one of my favorite shows, but they do a whole feminists and like gun ownership like episode
Oh,
where
really?
where women start carrying guns to make them feel safe, and I think the ultimate point is the California government bans guns because now they're afraid of them because women are using them instead of men. It's a very politically complex, which I always like from my
That is
comedy.
pretty dope.
Yeah,
Yeah, I probably would watch that
yeah,
episode. I like that.
it's good. I mean, the whole series is good, but it's not gothic horror. It's just a horse person. But
It's pretty absurd. It's pretty absurd. I remember when I watched that episode, I was like, "What is happening?" You know. Um,
Thinking of questions. I'm trying not to interrupt you when you're talking either, but
all right.
um, are you from Chicago?
I am from
Okay.
Chicago, so majority of my life grew up in Chicago. I'm in LA right now, but Chicago, I have a lot of family out there. So
Okay. So a lot of this was your experience living in Chicago.
yeah, yeah, I try to put a lot of experiences, places I've been, friends, different things I've seen. Just trying to distill that into a cool book. A lot of it's like the drill rap music scene with like Chief Keef and Lil Durk and all of them. I've been waiting for a long time for people to write like crime books about it. So that's why I wrote Black Gypsies with Broken River back in the day. Then Bullet Tooth was kind of like another one that came out of that
Okay.
space too. So yeah.
Okay. So would you have a lot of that kind of music as the backdrop to our theoretical video game?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like it would make it. 'Cause a lot of the music references I make in Bullet Tooth are all Chicago. I think 99% of it Chicago artists and Chicago drill artists who are violent, who might have charges. So I feel like it would make it more intense, a lot more fun during a lot of the scenes.
Now, did you? Because I know you talk. One of Jasmine's things she makes. I'm not. Should be more familiar with guns, but I'm not. She makes a thing that turns a semi-auto into an auto.
Which,
Yeah,
yeah,
switch. Is that a real thing?
it is a
Okay.
real thing. Yeah, and it's a real problem in Chicago in particular. Like, and it's just making people so dangerous where it's just like they're mowing down people. Like it's completely illegal, but I guess they're so cheap to get and buy. It makes sense to like protect yourself.
Yeah. Well, when you can 3D print them too.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Would
it's
that
pretty
would that
crazy.
be like a power up in this game?
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to earn, maybe go on little missions and side quests to gain enough points to or get enough money to buy a switch from
Okay.
someone. And then maybe you could buy higher quality switches and customizable guns. Like I remember I know Jasmine wanted the Draco, like a pink Draco.
Oh
She's
yeah.
been saving for it throughout it. So
Yeah.
that
You
could be
you,
like a
you
like an
mentioned a lot
ultimate
of.
weapon you get.
So I guess in multiplayer mode, right? So we would have one person playing Bullet Tooth, and I guess would be trying to kill lots of people or just the main characters or something. Although I guess he doesn't kill a lot of people directly. He like
Yeah,
gets
yeah,
them to
you're
do
right.
it to themselves.
Yeah, he's a bit of a puppet master, devil on your shoulder sort of trope. So there are times he directly gets involved and will fuck you up, like Big Poliano.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but most of the time, he just gets people to, you know, I guess like get in tune with their darkest thoughts. Because I feel like all of us have these dark thoughts where it's like, I'd like to punch this person in the face or I'd like to hurt this person. But usually you don't do
Right.
it. But Bullet Tooth really intensifies that to the point that's kind of like you're going to do it in the darkest way possible, in the most violent way possible.
And that's kind of the theme of the book. Almost is kind of these dark inner thoughts
Yeah,
with Bullet Tooth
yeah,
personifying them. I know Caleb itself, like depression and like the self medicating is like a big part of like what's going on with him, and then eventually finding art. Um, is that like is Caleb like almost a self portrait or a writer version of a self portrait, or is this stuff you've struggled with?
I put so you're right about the themes. I mean, there's multiple themes, but yeah, sort of those dark thoughts personified. And then also Bullet's a little bit of a metaphor for like the demon known as depression, where it's kind of like, can you overcome that even with therapy and self medication and all these tools in such a almost like third world country in Chicago? But the self portrait question, yeah, I used to, before I was a writer, I used to draw and paint. A lot of people don't know that. And in high school, I thought I was going to become a comic book artist, but things happened. I fell in love with writing, and I don't draw and paint anymore. But I used to be depressed in my teenage years. I used to be depressed in Chicago, um, and I've had different friends and gangs and all that. So I kind of drew on a lot of personal experience and put it together through this lens.
Okay. So that's interesting. So I mean, you could still be a comic artist. There's nothing stopping you.
I could, yeah, I've thought about it. I've played around with the idea a lot of times of doing it, but writing takes so much time and I only have so much time. If I have more days in a week, maybe I'd probably do a whole lot more. So
Well, you just got to find someone who wants to do the art, and then you just got to write for them too.
that's true. That's true. So that's a little bit of a side quest, side goal as a writer, to kind of like do some sort of comic book at some point. So
Would are there things you would so? Let's say we were making the Bullet Tooth graphic novel. Are there things you would change for a graphic novel versus how you wrote the book?
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I have already been playing around with other mediums in my head. If someone were to approach me, like a screenplay, but obviously graphic novel, we'd have to focus heavily on visuals and emotion. Um, so I don't know. I mean, it would still be fast paced, but I would definitely need an artist to really convey those emotions color wise or like shadows wise. Um, Maybe I'd make the therapy sessions less. There'd probably be a couple therapy sessions instead of multiple therapy sessions. Be a lot more visceral violence and colors, blood, gore. Um, but I mean, the core of it would be the same. I'd probably cut down on some of the social media aspects
Hmm.
because I need it to flow in a way. But I mean, the core of it would be the same.
All right.
I feel like the flashbacks would be pretty cool in the
Yeah.
graphic.
Well, yeah, and all the Bullet Tooth, Bluetooth, something else. Um, those were some of the stuff I found. It just the lore of Bullet Tooth himself is really interesting, right?
Yeah,
Especially in the
yeah.
wake of modern creepy like horror characters. Um, kind of like Slender Man, but I don't want to compare Bullet Tooth to Slender Man because Bullet Tooth is
Yeah,
a little harder than Slender Man, I guess. Um,
true, true.
I
Yeah,
don't know. I always
Slender Man too. Yeah,
well, that's I drew that picture of Bullet Tooth shooting Big Poliano because I was
oh
bored at
yeah,
work. Um, but Bullet Tooth looks so weird in it because in my head, I don't know if you played Dark Souls 3 or watched Dark Souls 3.
I know about Dark Souls 3. I've
Okay.
never played it,
Okay.
but I've
There's
seen it.
there's the there's these characters or these enemies, they're called the Outrider Knights, but they're bipedal, they're human, but they like
Yeah.
crawl around on their like hands and knees, like almost like animals. And I guess in
Oh, I
my
see.
mind, I had pictured Bullet Tooth like, yeah, looking like a big, lanky human, but like crawling on his hands and knees. So
That's
in that
pretty cool.
little
I like that
image I
imagery.
drew is he's like hunched
I,
over a
I love
little.
it. I think it's so dope. Um,
The bullets are a little
'Cause,
big,
I mean,
but
technically he could do that. And it took a while to try to figure out the cover too, um, because it is such a shape shifting entity. I love your big Poliano depiction. Great.
and Big
No,
Poliano's not a real person, right?
he's not. I
Okay.
might record a song with Big Poliano's voice to release it. Simmons keeps wanting me to write like a Big
So big.
Poliano book, like Big Poliano's first day out of jail. I did write a big Oleano short story and submitted it somewhere where some of his lore coming up, and he's dealt with some supernatural occurrences in his youth.
Oh, okay.
He became a gangster. So yeah, so I'm creating little Easter eggs for people.
So,
Um,
so this, I guess it was his final encounter with an uh,
it was his final.
NT, but it wasn't his first.
I mean, in the past, he didn't deal with bullet tooth, but he's dealt with giant water bugs um, in Chicago. So,
What
yeah.
are giant water bugs? Is this a like Chicago like cryptid like urban legend thing or
No, this is just something I made up. Kind of inspired, like my grandma's house. She lives in the hood, and she used to babysit me and watch me. And one of her apartments had water bugs. So a lot of people say, "Oh, I grew up with cockroaches." It's more so I seen water bugs, and it was very
yeah, I th- I
yeah.
think
So
I
I
did
kind of
that.
drew on that memory where I was like, well, let's say he had to go into a building with water bugs, and let's say he had to go get. There's a whole story. Like he has to go get like pearls from this water bug infested bathroom to get initiated into the game Black Disciples, which is a real gang in Chicago. So yeah, so that's kind of like a secret part of his lore. I
Oh,
guess you call here, or if you read the story
yeah.
whenever it gets comes out.
Well, and this is interesting too. So there's just all the more supernatural elements in this version of Chicago that you've crafted for the story.
Yeah,
Are there other
yeah.
supernatural elements that maybe didn't come up in the book that you would like want to include in like a game where you had more freedom to explore this Chicago?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, my books in general, I'm trying to pull like a Stephen King with the Dark Tower series, if you're familiar.
Not as much as they should be, but
It's basically all his books are connected in the same universe. And it all sort of culminates in the Dark Tower series. So like the clown in it and some of his other villains are actually all the same entity. So I'm not doing the same thing, but there's little references in all my books and some of my short stories. So if you were to be like a crazy Grant Wamack fan, you would be rewarded by little Easter eggs and connections.
okay.
But to your question, one thing I want to do in one of these books, but in a video game where if you play as Bullet Tooth, you can pull a bullet out of his gums and throw it at a character and kill them with it, or almost like unlimited ammo.
Okay.
So
That
something
would
like
be
that. But I haven't necessarily thought too deeply. Like there could be maybe some side quests where you research, you go to like an old library, you look through old books, try to gain knowledge or XP points, um, things like that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if there would be any extra occult
well there
activity.
is did you ever play I've never played it, I only know of it. Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. That was for the GameCube.
Oh, I know what you're talking. I see. I wished I had a GameCube so badly back in the
I
day,
have
but no, I never.
one sitting around I gotta do something with. But um that was a horror Silent Hill esque like
Yeah.
scary game. But it tried to play with you by like turning your volume down or or
Oh,
like showing volume on the screen, like make it look like things were happening outside the game.
oh, that's pretty cool.
And I
That's pretty
wonder if
dope.
there's a part of that like you could incorporate a sanity mechanic.
That's a good idea, actually. I do feel like it would be cool when Bullet Tooth comes and tries to sway you psychically. If there's some sort of like little mini game you could play or meter you could play with to kind of regain control of your willpower. So I feel like that would be pretty cool, where it's almost like he can make you punch yourself to death if you felt like it, or he makes you kill random people in the street, and you got to avoid the cops. Like the cops could arrest you, you know,
I
things like that. I feel like
wonder.
that's cool.
I wonder if mechanically this might be difficult. If there's a way for the bullet tooth player could like fuck with the mission objectives. So like the
Uh,
human players, I guess, would have to do missions, and like, oh, if you're bullet tooth and you do enough this, now you can change their mission objective to tell them to kill someone else, even though that's not what they're supposed to do. And like you
yeah,
would
I
have
wonder
to be an
how.
attentive player to realize like, oh wait, he changed this on me without me noticing.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I feel like that increases anxiety and danger and tension because it's kind of like, okay, you just murdered someone. Now the cops are searching for you in the city while you're still trying to
Find
complete
all the
your mission.
VHS tapes or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Or you trying to throw away the VHS tape or burn it or whatever. Or you're trying to go get more Percocets from the dealer.
Now, why VHS tapes?
Big inspiration. I was watching a lot of analog horror, specifically like Backrooms. There was a time last year I just kept watching backroom videos, and not even from just Kane Pixel's original creator, but a bunch of other accounts. And then I was watching other analog horror series on YouTube, and I just thought it was fascinating. I couldn't like get it out of my head, so I wanted to write something similar, that kind of plays on that, where it's kind of like probably does sound kind of far fetched. Why would someone in this day and age watch a VHS tape? But I feel like physical media is becoming popular again. Um, we're having sort of a mini comeback.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I thought it'd be cool. Like, let's bring it back. Let's bring a VHS tape because also the bootleg man's based off real people. A lot of there's bootleg men in Chicago growing up who would be selling DVDs and VHSs, and my grandma would always be buying them. And I don't know if they're still around. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not, but that's why I kind of brought in like the last of a dying breed bootleg man to the book. So
I think in Baltimore all we have are people selling scents. I don't know if that's a thing anywhere else or if that's just Baltimore. I just
I feel
feel
like
like
some I've been to Baltimore a few times. I've seen that, but I feel like I've seen that somewhere else. I don't know if
yeah.
it's in Seattle or Portland, somewhere like that.
I know definitely DC, but DC and Baltimore, they're not the
Yeah,
same at all. Don't let David
they're
catch me
not.
ever
They're
saying
not.
that. But
Yeah,
they are next to each other. So like if there's a trend happening in one, it's probably going to spill over into the other. So,
yeah.
hopefully a cargo ship doesn't hit a DC bridge. It feels messed up to make fun of that since it's
That was a
that
good
that
one.
bridge is that's like right there. like like it was like a 10-minute drive to get to that bridge, and like
Oh, really?
it
That's
just
crazy.
fucking like collapsed, and it's like I would use that bridge to go certain places. Just because that was the convenient way to get to the, because with Baltimore, there's the north and the south, and
Yeah,
um, your options are take 695 all the way around, which takes forever. Take the
yeah,
tunnels that kind of go through the middle, and pop you out one end or the other, or go over the bridge. And I get claustrophobic, so like I don't like the tunnels if I can avoid them.
see what
I
you're
prefer
saying.
the
Yeah.
bridges because the idea of drowning to death in my car in a tunnel is like,
I mean, that sounds pretty horrible.
yeah, well, so does falling into the river on a bridge. So
Yeah,
it's like, damn.
you just
Well,
can't win.
well, my wife's afraid of heights, so she
Yeah.
always hates when we took the bridge. Now I don't know if she'll let us drive over a bridge ever again.
Damn, that sucks.
Yeah.
Probably would have to go around. Damn.
Not, well, and some people go around because the bridge and the tunnels both have tolls, whereas the long way around doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like you save your $4 if you take the short way, just in gas.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. I used to live in back when I was in the military, I used to be in Maryland and DC, and I used to go
Okay.
to Baltimore a lot back in the day.
Yeah, I read that you were in the Navy, right?
I was in the Navy 8 years doing journalism work.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I didn't know the Navy had journalists.
Yeah, they call them mass communication specialists. So you do like photo, video, print. So usually most of the time I was writing news stories and I was in charge of like the newspaper.
Okay. Did some of your, I mean, obviously with just like the firearms knowledge, is there other stuff from your time with the Navy that, found its way into the book?
Not into this book. No, I've been figuring out a way to write something military related, but I had such a complicated experience with the military that I don't. So it puts a bad taste in my mouth. Like it did teach me a lot. Travel a lot of places and stuff, but I just got burnt out on it, and they also kind of they did me wrong. So, yeah, it's kind of like no. Every time I sit down to write like a military related story, I'm like, no, we have enough military related stories.
Well,
So
you gotta make the military the bad guys.
that's exactly what I would do. I would make the military the bad guys for sure. So,
I mean, that's something I feel like we need more of, but
I agree. I agree. We don't need more propaganda. Um,
yeah, well, I don't want to get too political. It's just, I don't know. So, like, I consider myself somewhat conservative, but I'm always like, the police and the politicians are not your friends.
they're
The
not your
police
friend.
don't work for you, they work for the government, and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, which your book had a little bit of politics in it, not annoyingly so.
Thank
Some
you.
things
Thank you.
are,
That's
but
always my goal in my books. It's like I just hate when people get preachy with politics and commentary and heavy handed. So it's kind of like I kind of want to show it rather than shove it down your throat where it's kind of like, oh, there's gun violence. There's control. Are guns good?
Mhm.
Are they bad? I just kind of like posing questions where it's kind of like makes the reader think. Where it's kind of like,
Well, and you had
should we?
oh, I'm sorry, keep talking.
Yeah, I was saying it's okay. Even a little like yeah, what I said in the newscast about like the shooting. There's always so many shootings in Chicago and people being mowed down, and then they talk about gun control. Is it bad? Is it good? So there's just I feel like everything's so nuanced. There's not a way to really like make it black and white. So yeah, but yeah, I'm happy you said it's not preachy because I'm like I hate preachy books. Like
Yeah. Well, so like there's a LeVar Burton book that I got the audiobook for, and I tried to listen to it, and it immediately jumped into like just him talking about, like, before the book started, he was like, here's my preamble about how terrible Trump was, and I was like, I love you, LeVar Burton, but I want to hear your story. I don't want to hear your
yeah,
opinions.
a lot of times I don't want to hear like even if it's a writer I love. Sometimes I just skip the introduction or the whatever authors. No, like it depends on who it is. But once if it starts getting too deep and too preachy and too political, I'm like, let's just get to the book. I bought the book for the book.
Exactly. Well, and I know, like, Jasmine has a scene where she's shooting a picture of Trump, and
Yeah,
I just remember thinking to myself, like, okay, this is a character moment. This isn't you telling me how I'm supposed to feel one way or the other about it. This
yeah. I definitely
is
didn't want people to be like, oh, this means Grant is pro-Trump or anti-Trump. It's just more so like this is a feminist character
that's how
who
she's gonna feel.
I feel like, yeah, most women don't like Trump, and justly so, because he's always grabbing by the pussy. Um, so I feel like I'm not a woman, but I try to put myself in her shoes with Jasmine, where it's kind of like I probably hate Trump because he is a womanizer, like he is misogynistic. So
Yeah.
I feel like it would be a cool scene to have her shooting Trump.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and show she's politically minded,
yeah, yeah,
and then that happens before. That's like right before the one guy tries to get with her, and she like pistol whips him.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What happened there?
He gets his in the end, but
He really does. Yeah, yeah. So I like comeuppance in books and movies. So yeah.
so this wasn't your first book. I know. I can't remember if it was the preamble or if it was like the post amble. Is that a thing? You talked about how this was what you wanted to write, and then Broken River, J. David Osborne, or whoever had you told you to write something else before this, or did I read that correctly?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm glad you read the acknowledgments at the end because yeah, I wanted to be with Broken River so bad when I was younger. Like I was like, oh man, I want to be Broken River. Everyone, the cool kids are on Broken River, and I've been cool. I would consider J. Dave Osborne like one of my best friends in general, and I know he would the same. So I've been to like book conventions with him. We've hung out. But I was writing like bizarro books, but I've always loved crime fiction, and I've written crime fiction like secretly. But I didn't know how to put it out there, so I wrote Black Gypsies, which is probably my first book with a lot of like black characters, and just people of color. So I pitched that and I pitched Bullet Tooth, but honestly, Bullet Tooth was supposed to be a completely different, like similar but different. It was supposed to be like an atomic bomb that was conscious, dropping. And it was supposed to be kind of surreal in Chicago, and I had no idea how to pull it off.
Mm.
Realistic. And I feel like I've read about writers saying I wasn't ready. Like Neil Gaiman, for example. I can't remember what book he said. It could be the Graveyard Book or something else. He said he wasn't ready to write a book when he was younger, but it's been in his head forever. So this book's been in my head. Like I'm 35, but been in my head since I was like 23. Percolating and simmering, and I didn't necessarily feel mature enough to write it. So I think it's kind of like the universe and JDO combined. So I think it was good that he rejected that. He didn't necessarily reject it, but he was kind of like, both these sound cool, but let's go with Black Gypsies because that sounds more doable. That sounds like you could execute that and it would actually be a good story. So yeah.
And so Bullet 2 shifted from like a sentient atomic bomb to something more occult in the
Yeah, he was always
8 or
violent.
so years.
Yeah, yeah. I always wanted him to be something violent, but I was kind of like just a little too avant-garde and too surreal for me to do something I feel passionate about. So, and I've always been interested in the occult too, so it just made sense.
Yeah. I know you mentioned your bio somewhere mentioned like you do tarot cards and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, I do tarot readings, I do palm readings, I even do mediumship, like I can talk to like ghosts and the dead and all that
Oh, okay.
too. I don't advertise that as much because it's stressful, but yeah, I do a lot. It's always been there.
Okay. And is that something that's been a big influence on your like writing as you've written it?
Yeah, most of my other books too have some sort of occult magic aspects to it, like a lot of them. And sometimes people they'll read it and they'll be like, oh, a lot of horror authors just write occult stuff to throw it in there. But it's like I'm genuinely interested in it. I read random books. I've been involved in different things and I've seen different things and I've dated witches and all sorts of stuff. So it's just very normal part of my life where it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm putting this in the book because this feels right. So yeah,
Yeah, well, it's write what you know, right?
yeah, yeah.
Should have more questions. Let's see. I mean, it's one of those things where we moved away from the video game, but the video game aspect of the show isn't that important. Um, what are some big what are some of the influences that worked their way into Bullet Tooth that you can recall or think of?
Let me think. So obviously the back rooms, a lot of occult life and living in general. Trying to think writing wise. I had the style figured out, but what helped too was reading B.R. Yeager. Are you familiar with him? B.R. Yeah. So there's a press called Apocalypse Party, and they're made like they publish such dark, dread-inducing books. So like me and Simmons loves Apocalypse Party. So B.R. Yeager, when I read him, it was like I'm not gonna say it was life changing. That sounds
Right.
dramatic, but it was definitely like a big influence because the atmosphere was so heavy. It almost made me feel sick. Like it wasn't disgusting or anything like that, but the way he wrote these words and the texture and the images he evoked made something click in my mind as I was writing Bullet too. So I kind of added a little bit more atmosphere, a little bit more darkness, and some of the prose styling is a little influenced by him. Not completely, but if you read Yeager, you would know. Same thing with Charlene Elsby. Shout out Charlene Elsby. I love her. That same thing, Apocalypse Party. I read a couple of her books. And same thing, like it feels like a hallucinogenic experience where by the time you're done reading a book, you feel weird and you feel off and you feel genuinely disturbed. And I read a lot of horror. I've consumed a lot of horror media, and a lot of things don't affect me anymore. Like I'm kind of desensitized. I'm sure you've experienced this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it gets to a point where it's kind of like you're looking for something to actually affect you, and the Apocalypse Party books affect me. Um, and it helped me. It kind of gave me that motivation and that inspiration to kind of add some aspects to that to Bullet Tooth. So Bullet Tooth isn't as dark as that because I did submit it to Apocalypse Party and it wasn't necessarily. I don't know if it was rejected or not, but I don't know if you didn't have time to get to it. But after I read more Apocalypse Party books, I was like, oh, this isn't dark enough for Apocalypse Party. It's got its silly, absurd, funny moments. I like putting humor in books, so yeah. So, I don't know if the humor worked for you at all, but
I mean, I certainly laughed. And
okay,
there's sort of the it's like her and her two friends. Or I made the meme because Twin came up.
oh yeah, twin.
It's
Yeah,
where,
such an irritating trend in rap music now, where they've been calling each other twin. Of like, what up, twin? What up, twinski? And I'm just like, this is maybe it's just because I'm getting older and I'm becoming an old head. But I'm just like, I hate this, and I'm like, I know there's got to be a young person who can't stand this either. So I made Khaled. I kind of used him to kind of air that out and
um,
make fun of friends, where it's like, I'm not your twin. Like, just be normal. Yeah.
it's funny because after reading that, I was like, I'm gonna start calling David Twin because we realized we keep getting like the same or similar eyeglasses, and that's just from both of us
Yeah.
being eyeglass people.
Did you call him twin yet?
I haven't yet. I haven't
You
seen
got
him
it.
in a while, but next time I see him, I'll say twin. If he's wearing these same ones, because I just got these, and he got these same ones, because they were
Oh,
some,
okay.
they were like a new Versace sunglass, and we both
Oh,
collectively
okay.
decided, like, oh, that's what we want to wear all the time, like independently.
I see you two drift out, flexing on us.
Yeah, my Japanese suspenders.
The Japanese suspenders, fat. You've seen fashion plays a big role in Bullet too. So if you were in there, I would definitely describe your Japanese suspenders and Versace glasses.
Yeah. Well, and these are funny because I just had regular suspenders that I started wearing because I was like, I'm gonna see if these are more comfortable than a belt, and they were.
Yeah.
And
Oh wow.
then at my like new job that I've been at for like a few months. I guess they were cleaning out some closets and they said, "Oh, Alan, come over here." And it was just like a whole big bag of suspenders like this.
That's
And I
crazy.
was just like, "Why do you have these?" They were like, "Some guy must have given them to one of the doctors like years ago and he didn't want them and they've just been sitting here." And I was like, "Okay, I'll take them."
You
So,
were meant to have these
yeah,
suspenders.
apparently. It was meant to leave working with David to get these suspenders. Hopefully they're not cursed or something.
Hopefully not.
Or maybe they're lucky
I would,
charms like the severed
I
finger.
would save them, but that's me. It's just like,
Um is the finger that's like a protective charm, is that like a real
oh, that's
occult
based
like
off.
thing?
That's based off a real situation. So me, Kelby Losack, J. David Osborne, we were all getting into Thai magic.
Okay.
And there's a guy, I don't know if he's a monk or if he's like just a Thai magic practitioner. It's a guy named Jinx. Uh, and we had some friend named Reverend Janglebones. This all sounds like crazy and made up, but
This
it
is
was
the book you need to write. Need Jinx and Reverend Janglebones, man.
yeah, Reverend Janglebone. Shout out to him. He's sort of like a Christian magic practitioner, so it
Okay.
sounds crazy. But he's pretty cool. He writes as well, and he was telling all of us about how it works. So I ordered a random one. I remember if it had a finger in it or not, or if it had something else in it, like some crystals, like a picture of like a dead ghost or something. So they try to like put spirits in there,
Right.
and you use them to kind of like help with success or money and things like that. And people swear by them.
Yeah.
I got kind of nervous. I'm very careful with what I mess with. And it started messing with my money because I noticed my money getting messed up. And I had a psychic friend I called. This is really going crazy down the hole.
You know.
Um, I called a friend I consult, and she was like, "Yeah, you shouldn't have got that. You need to get rid of it." And I was like, "How do I get rid of it?" And it was like, she said basically it was sucking my money up and my abundance because it wanted attention. Um, the spirit or ghost. Like I wasn't feeding it. So I was like, damn. And I guess it was kind of attached to my energy when I bought it and it was shipped from Thailand. So I was advised to like bury it under a big tree and everything was better off after
Okay.
that.
You got your money back.
Basically, yeah, my money returned to normal and everything was good. I felt better. Things changed like the next day. And I was like, let me try to weave this into the story. That's why Fredo gets a random Thai
Gifted
amulet.
finger.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just all these little interesting things, because it's not really like, gangster and gang warfare is at the center of it, but
Yeah.
it is an occult horror story just set in that backdrop.
Yeah. I wanted that crime or occult or hybrid to take place. And some people, readers are a little irritated because they didn't want the crime in there. They just wanted the horror. But
Whatever,
whatever.
man. I
This is,
mean,
this is the meal I cooked up, and this is what you got.
well, and that's the setting, right?
Yeah, Chicago is like, what do
You
you
know,
think's going to happen in the bad part of Chicago?
yeah.
Like, BDs, there's GDs, there's Kings, like there's all sorts of, vice lords out there. It's gonna happen.
Be like people getting upset that Pirates of the Caribbean and people stealing ships and being pirates. It's like
Yeah,
it's a movie about pirates. Like I know you want your
yeah,
high seas adventure story, but
yeah,
still,
yeah.
I don't know. That's a weird way to put it, but
Yeah, yeah. But people are like that.
yeah. Well, people have expectations.
That's
Um,
true.
What are you working on? Anything right now, book wise or script
Yeah,
wise?
yeah, there's a book I'm working on. The code name is Project Bunny Bloodbath. Um,
Okay.
so I'm very suspicious about or superstitious about putting titles out there before I get the book done.
Yeah.
Um, so it is Easter themed. It's got bunnies in it. It's got
Oh,
blood and gore.
you gotta get that out
So
soon.
yeah, I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about that. So we'll see. We'll see. But that's the book I'm working on. I'm very excited and it's very straight up horror, as you could probably guess.
That's
Easter
yeah. I mean,
theme.
yeah.
Partially inspired like what Eli Roth did Thanksgiving and did that. I
Mm,
was like, what if I did something with Easter that was fun and occult heavy? Um, so yeah, I mean the book cover's done. It's pretty cool and yeah, I think it's really good. But it's got a nice balance. So that's the main one. Like I said, I have a concept for Bullet Tooth 2. Uh, and then there is an idea I would talk about. I do want to make like a Bullet Tooth book full of like short stories, kind of exploring all the aspects of Bullet Tooth um, in different times and woman, man, androgynous,
yeah.
hermaphrodite, you know.
Yeah. Just a
Um,
string of prequels during
yeah,
tumultuous
yeah,
times.
yeah. And then I got a book called Melancholy's Finest, which is kind of like my cyberpunk book.
Okay.
That's also known as the Motor Poppy Chronicles. So I'm working on the sequel to that too. I'm trying to drop one every summer, that series, until it's done.
Yeah. Until you have none left to write.
Yeah, and this
Why summer for a cyberpunk story?
the main character Motor Poppy is from Spain, so I love Spain. It's very warm, uh, hot climate. So I think about summer, and I think about these books. So
Okay.
it just feels right to drop them in the summer.
I ask because every summer I do a summer like movie challenge where I challenge myself to watch a bunch of movies within kind of like a narrow genre. So like one summer it was all road trip movies, one summer it was summer camp movies. But this summer I wanted to do summer sci-fi movies.
That's pretty cool.
But
I like that.
one of the things I'm struggling with is like what makes a sci-fi movie a summer sci-fi movie.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Huh. Oh no.
I mean, it's like,
All right.
desert planets or post-apocalyptic
Yeah, it has to be
deserts,
like hot, warm movies. Like,
Tank Girl, Mad
yeah, I don't know why.
Max,
What's that sci-fi movie with Wesley Snipes in it?
Demolition Man?
Demolition Man. I
See,
don't know why.
no, but I get it, right? In my mind, I think, like, yeah, that's a
Yeah,
summer
I like
sci-fi
that. The
movie.
summer.
But why?
Uh,
It's in LA, I guess it's sunny.
yeah,
The other,
it
the,
feels hot.
yeah. Well, the other one that's like on my short list of like, this is what I'm going to watch is, The Last Starfighter.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you're familiar with that.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like it takes place, I guess, like after he's done school, but before he would go to college because he's talking about not getting the scholarship. So in my mind, it like makes sense as a summer science fiction movie.
It would have to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Um, yeah.
But you threw out
Um,
Demolition Man, which is good because like might not have watched it thinking I was the only one who thought it was a summer movie, but since you
no,
came
I
out
thought
and were like,
that came to my mind. I was kind of like, okay, I think hot, sweaty. I didn't think about the space ones first. I thought about the ones on Earth. That was the one. Um, but yeah. How did you feel about the fashion heavy elements of Bullet Tooth?
fashion is not something I'm super familiar with. So
Yeah.
I don't even know if I picked up there were fashion elements. I'm sure that you were
Okay. Yeah.
describing
Very
people wearing stuff. Um
yeah. Yeah.
but as like an antisocial shut-in most of the time, like and which is strange because the eyeglass industry is the weird fashion healthcare like industry overlap, and I've hit a
Yeah.
point where like I'm wearing Versace's and like designer suspenders and button up shirts with leaves on them, and just like um over the years have said, well, I've developed what I want to look like and this is it. And people
It's
like,
pretty
oh,
dope.
your glasses look great, and it's like, thank you. um but it's like, man, it's like I don't go out. You describe this big I don't want to call it a rave club. I forgot the exact term you used
It's just a
for it.
club for
Yeah.
sure.
And
I
they
can
were
see what
like going out, and
quality.
in my mind I was like, wow, I would never go there. That's way too many people. I don't want to see it. But then it makes it easy to emphasize with Caleb when Caleb's like, I don't want to go to this. Why are you dragging me out here? And it's his friend.
He doesn't want to be out with all these people. But then it's like there's Jasmine and she wants to be social and seen, and then there's Big Poliano, you know.
It was just fronting.
Yeah, really, really fake, pop hungry. Yeah.
He is
Um,
interesting. I
yeah.
don't know. I didn't think I wanted like Big Poliano prequel series until you started talking about it, and I was like,
So David got me hyped about it, and he was getting hyped. He was like, "Big Poliano, we need to do some things with him. Are you familiar with his Young Beasley
I
series?
am not.
There was like last year before VoidCon, this convention. They were doing like writer prompts, where you would write a story with
The
a
void
tweet, right?
prompts. Yeah.
Yeah, and a bunch of his started to just be about this older rapper named Young Beasley, and we might still do it, like a collaborative book with Big Poliano and Young Beasley, like short stories and interactions. But
Getting
yeah,
into
I don't
like,
know how Big Poliano is taking a life of his own, even though he's gone and passed, R.I.P.
yeah, just the idea of just like a fake rapper, like a rapper that talks about like, yeah, from the streets and all that, but he's just like wearing fake diamonds, and
Yeah,
or he's just he just wants to be cool. Like he's really just like an awkward. I don't want to say
yeah,
loser on the inside, but
that's based off a lot of real. There's a lot of real rappers who, like rent their cars or they rent their jewelry or they have fake. There's people with diamond testers running up on them in the club and being like, "Let's see if this is real." So I wanted to bring that into the book too, where it's like the diamond
crazy to
tester.
me. People are like, well, I mean, it's like, oh man, it's like you never want to be caught with fake diamonds. I guess I don't even wear
Oh,
diamonds,
especially if
but then
you're
I get.
rapping millions and all this stuff, it's like your reputation goes down the drain.
That's why you can see in my little picture there. He says, "Ow, my street cred." Um,
That's
you
when
know,
it truly his street cred in his heart. Yeah.
but yeah, just him being kind of just like joke of a human being
Yeah.
getting into supernatural hijinks. Like, oh yeah, this place is infested with water bugs. You gotta go steal these pearls if you want in our gang. But like, of course, he walks in and it's just like two giant human-sized water bugs, like reading a book or playing a Game Boy or something. Like, yo, what the fuck? And him just like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Like,
Yeah. Like, what do I do here?
it's like I need these pearls. And then, of course, the
Right.
joke is they're like, "Oh yeah, here you go. We don't need them. We're water bugs." He's like, "You didn't
Right.
steal anything from anyone." Awkwardly fumbling his way up the social ladder.
Back when
Just,
he's little Poliano. Back when he's skinny, but he's
oh
still
yeah,
wearing a fit back then.
oh, yeah.
So
He's like little Poliano, then he becomes skinny Poliano, and then
little
he's
Poliano.
briefly just regular Poliano.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been about an hour. I know you said you only wanted to do a little bit over an hour.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
respect your time as a human being.
I appreciate you
Is there
respecting my time as a human
is there
being.
anything else you want to say about Bullet Tooth or the
Uh,
eyeglass fashion industry or
I
water
would just say
bugs?
buy Bullet Tooth. If you like Chief Keef and drill music and violent entities, and I really feel like if you want to read something different with diverse characters, I would say read Bulletins because one of my beefs with the publishing industry sometimes they always talk about they want diversity, but they don't actually do diversity. It's like let's
Publish
throw
the
one
same
black
thing.
character in there, let's throw a Mexican up in there, and then we check the box. Cool, It's like why don't we do more with this? So I do feel like I crafted some unique characters, and it's a fun, fast-paced book that isn't like 800 pages. So
Right. Yeah, you can sit down and read it in a reasonable amount of time.
yeah, yeah, that's usually my goal with a lot of my books, where I want you to be able to sit down and just enjoy it, and it moves at a good clip. So yeah,
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I'm going to try and get this edited and
thank
then hopefully it'll be up early next week maybe. Depends on
you. Okay,
my
whenever I'm not.
kids if my kids stay asleep. I'll tag you in it. But
Okay, cool, cool.
yeah, thank you for your time and have a good night.
You too. Thank you. All right, bye.
Peace.